What is up, divine beings? Peace, love, abundance, blessings. This is AstroPapi here, and today I'm making a video that is going to be more personal. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my own experience with beginning my own spirituality, and this is really about how I even began to communicate with spirits as a full-time spiritist, espiritista, or psychic medium, somebody who is able to connect to the dead, somebody who's able to go into different spiritual veils, meaning that I am able to talk to different deities, different realms, to be able to channel in information. Now, this isn't something that I ever expected myself doing. This is something that happened due to just personal events in my life. And for those who might relate, spiritual awakenings don't always start easy or start pretty. Some people are born into spiritual paths because of what their family may have practiced. And there are other people out there who later on in life pick up their own spiritual abilities and gifts, and these are unlocked. And you never know if in different lives you've had these, or even if spirituality was not directly taught to you, maybe you had ancestors in a few generations previously who were spiritual, who did tap into some type of spiritual practice. So for me, myself, I grew up in a very Christian background, in a very religious background, where that was a more restricted type of spirituality. And I have no beef against the church, yo. I believe that there's good lessons there, but there's also a lot of problems there as well. And that's a story for another day, but I grew up being told that if I saw anything that was otherworldly, that wasn't associated to the church's narrative, then that wasn't necessarily real, or it was a outside source of malevolence, aka the devil, trying to move me in a negative direction. And as a kid, I remember passing through different temples and different just spiritual stores. I grew up in LA, so I was an inner city kid, and I remember just seeing so much culture. I remember seeing so many different statues in so many different places and seeing them move, seeing like energies around them. And even as a kid, I remember crying. Once when I was like maybe 7, I remember telling my mom like, hey, I'm feeling certain things around me. I'm feeling like spirits around me. And I was just told to pray it away. And that's the best she could do because she was also indoctrinated, and that's just how she could show up. So there's no shade in any way or form, but I never took I guess my ability to perceive or my openness too seriously as a kid. I just sort of left it there. And because I was told that anything that wasn't really of relation to the church, then it was bad. I sort of shut off my spiritual gifts. I didn't really tap into them until I was 19. And when I was 19, I went through personal loss. So I went through the loss of both my dad and my childhood best friend. And during those times, I really had a lot of difficulty with understanding what death even was, which if you see my videos now, you see me talking so much about spirits of the dead, such as Santa Muerte, and I'll get to her in a bit because she was the first spirit guide that I ever worked with. And basically, going back to when I was 19, I remember feeling so much loss, so much grief, and the first spiritual experience that I remember having since reawakening my gifts without me wanting to again was when my childhood best friend showed up in a dream to me. And I was going through a lot of grief at that time. I felt like as I was watching my childhood best friend, go into illness, and I don't want to give too many details, but she was going into illness, and I was there every step of the way in terms of just being a friend. There wasn't more than I can do. And when you have somebody who's severely ill and it's their time to go, it's very difficult because there's a part of you that feels hopeless, that feels useless, because you want to heal this person. You want to make sure that they're good, that they're okay. But there are things sometimes as a human that you cannot necessarily have control over. And I remember feeling so much sadness. And months after my friend passed, she came into my dreams and told me, I'm good where I am. I'm happy where I am. And I remember us sitting in a koi pond, and I saw her wearing all white, and she just looked really at peace. And she said, do not worry about me, and don't feel like you didn't do enough for me. You were there. You gave me company as I was going over to this side of life, of being, of existence, because life exists over there. And I want you to know that you gave me company and that's all that you needed to do. From there, I remember asking her how in the world was I even able to speak to her, and she told me not to worry about that. And I saw her walk away, and then I woke up. So that to me was when I first realized that there is a veil between the living and the dead. And as somebody who is part Mexican, like, I definitely know that Day of the Dead is something that we celebrate and we honor in communication with the ancestors. So I do have that ancestral connection, but it was also just that experience that opened me up. And then with my dad, it was also very difficult because we didn't have the easiest relationship. It's funny now because I'm wearing his necklace and his Virgen de Guadalupe ring, if y'all can see it. I'm wearing his Scorpio necklace because he was a Scorpio. And long story short, we had some beef growing up and we had some tensions and some conflicts and some difficulties. And I remember as he crossed over on the other side, I still had resentment. I still had unprocessed emotions. And for years, he would try to show up in dreams, asking me to connect, asking me to show up, asking me to communicate to him. And in my dreams, I told him I wasn't ready, that I wasn't in the space to be able to talk to him, that I was scared, that I was also still angry. So there were so many moments where I could feel his spirit and I would deny it and ignore it. And still, I didn't think too much of it. Then years later, I moved to New York and I was in grad school. And this was probably a moment where I just had so much alone time because I didn't know anybody in the city. I didn't have anybody. Now I have a whole network of people, but back then I didn't have anybody there. And my first winter there, I remember just feeling that feeling of like, okay, I left to a new environment, but I have all these unprocessed emotions that I still have to fix or look through. And around the time of my dad's birthday, I remember just feeling so sad and sunken. And that's when a certain spirit guide started to show up in my path. And that spirit guide is none other than Santa Muerte, who is depicted as the Grim Reaperess. She started showing up in dreams and visions, and I was so afraid and I was so scared. And I just remember being so guarded with approaching her and connecting with her, and she would follow me for a couple of months and I still wouldn't necessarily talk to her. And there was one time where I'm doing work for grad school because I went to New York for grad school to get my master's in writing. I remember sitting and I saw a book at a library with her stuff there, and it was just a desk that I chose to be in, and her book was right there. So I'm sitting, I pick up the book, and I just know that it was a sign that she wanted to talk to me. And I take the book with me, I meditate, and she tells me that the other side wants to speak to me, but I'm still too afraid, and that she's here to show me what it's like to see beyond the veil. And the way she showed me the veil was just this black velvet curtain that all it needs is for us to pull through and we can see. However, she said, yes, there can be a lot of difficulties on the other side. That's why I'm here. And for many people, you might have a spirit guide that can be like Santa Muerte, excuse the siren, but also confirmation. You might have a spirit guide like Santa Muerte, or who represents some sort of like cemetery imagery. So in Voodoo, you would have Baron Samedi or Maman Bridget. In the Yoruba pantheon, you would have Oya. These spirits of the cemetery, sometimes they come to people who could be what would be described as a cycle pump. These are people who pick up spirits of the dead. These are people who can communicate to spirits of the dead and who can also help them cross over, help them ascend if their spirit is still stuck, if their spirit is still low, if their spirit is still weak and cannot yet ascend. So at that time, Santa Muerte came to me and said, the other side wants to communicate to you, but you need to open yourself up. And it took me a while, even after hearing that, to finally open up. And on the other side was my dad ready to talk to me and ready to just communicate. And I remember just thinking, like, how am I even speaking to you? Because this was all just in my head telepathically. And how do I know I'm not crazy? And from there, I saw a group of indigenous people surrounding me in my meditation and them saying, if you think this is crazy, you still have some colonized voices within you that you need to unroot yourself from and understand that through meditating, through just feeling what you feel, through connecting, you have opened yourself up to another veil. And in this veil, we are here to talk to you. We are here to support you. We are here to empower you. And I was definitely bitter because I just felt like, why me? And I remember saying that, like, why did I have to grow up with a difficult life? That was my first question when I opened up my ancestral veil. And they said, in other lives, you had great riches, you had great ease, and you didn't always use it right. And you had spirituality, but you didn't pertain to it. And in this life, you are here to be an alchemist. You are here to help others. And you are here to gain everything that you desire by helping others, by healing, and by understanding the power of internal alchemy, which is internal magic. And from there, I was like, okay, well, so basically, through connecting with the other side, I started realizing that the veil between the living and the dead is really thin. And it's only once you're ready that you can have that. If you're somebody like me where you didn't choose to see spirits of the dead and maybe you'd started to see them, you didn't choose to see maybe ancestors or past loved ones around you, but they started showing up, it's because you have a very open heart. It's not even just that you have psychic gifts, it's just that your heart is open to connections. Your heart is open to that love. You're so compassionate that you have so much care for the other side, even when the other side might not be physically right next to you. You got me? So for those of you who are watching this who might relate, I'm really hoping this is of service because I know for me, I felt so lost. I felt so confused. And I remember also feeling like, okay, like, what do I do now? And it was just through meditation. It was through setting up my ancestral altar, which honestly didn't start with pictures. It started with, I mean, I'm Mexican, so I had like skulls. And then from there, I remember praying and saying, please give me more information of my family. And from there, I had certain family members who I haven't spoken to in years start giving me phone calls telling me about people in our ancestry who I never even heard about ever. So it was like as soon as I was ready to connect, as soon as I asked for understanding, as soon as I asked for clarity, I got the answers that I needed. And in some way, shape, or form, even when it came to my relationship with my dad and me having so much resentment, there were moments where I guess my spirit, I guess my heart, even if my mind wasn't fully there because I was resentful in my head, my heart wasn't, because the heart sometimes speaks louder than the mind. I remember just feeling like there was answers that I needed, and I got it. I got it through the help of the ancestors, through the help of my dad on the other side reaching out. I got it through my friend who told me, don't worry about me, I'm good where I am, because she elevated as a spirit. And I got it through the help of Santa Muerte, who is a portal between the living and the dead. And I know her imagery is scary, and I know that her image is sometimes misused or her name is misused, but she represents the connection between the living and the dead. She represents great protection. She represents protecting us from near-death experiences, but also protecting us from any spirits of the other side who might not have the best intentions. So this is really how I started my spiritual upbringing and my spiritual journey. And from there, I started connecting more with my ancestors. I guess like whatever was watching over me, maybe it was all my guides. They knew that I was comfortable connecting with my ancestors. And when I would see other people, I would start seeing ancestors on their behalf, and I would start getting messages on their behalf. And don't get it twisted, y'all. Yes, I do tarot, but I don't need the cards to channel all the time. And there'll be moments in my life, yo, where I'll just be just doing my regular thing. And spirit will tell me like, yo, this person's ancestors need you to relay a message to them. And sometimes I'll do it. It's not always, but that's just how it gets when you get to a certain level of connection. And all it really took was an openness. Now, I'm not saying this openness was right away, but once Santa Muerte came in, it was almost like she was that bridge. And here's the thing. You can connect with your ancestors on your own. I don't want to confuse this, and this is no shade to Santa Muerte, Because here's the thing, when the ancestors show me themselves, they showed that my connection with them is in my heart chakra. So a lot of people think your third eye chakra and your crown are spiritual, but so is your heart, all right? And I remember just feeling like, okay, I was seeing them, I was hearing them, but I think Santa came to me specifically because I was still thinking that I was crazy for seeing them and hearing them. And Santa was just like, I'm going to show myself to you. And it took a lot of deconditioning because her image scared me. And I remember feeling so scared. And it was almost like as soon as I wasn't afraid of her, as soon as I wasn't afraid of death, I wasn't afraid of the spirit realm. I wasn't afraid of the other side. And I made it through. And now I'm able to be somebody who can be between both realms, who has spirit guides on the other side who I communicate with. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to do what I do, but it wasn't easy. What I had was a dark night of the soul experience, and sometimes we don't go through just one. But here's the thing, I'm grateful for my experience. I'm grateful that I have the privilege to do what I do for a living. I channel people's past loved ones. I channel people's ancestors in the divination work that I do. And it's really such a blessing to help people find closure, to find healing, to rebuild connections to the other side that they didn't even think that they could do. So this was just a testimonial of my experience, and also this might give y'all some just background as to why I'm so close to Santísima Muerte, and why, even though I connect with a lot of deities, you always see me going back to her because she was my first spirit guide and I shouted out to her. And people see the sweet face and are like, yo, how do you work with her? And it's like, because it's all love. I see beyond the imagery. I decode the imagery to understand it. All right, that's all you got to do. But I hope this video was a service to y'all. Just remember, I do offer psychic divination. I do ancestor channelings. I do spirit guide readings. You can find all of that on my website below. If you want to get the statue or any other spiritual tools that I recommend, I do have my Amazon shopping list below. Stay beautiful, stay abundant, stay great. If y'all have any ideas for any videos y'all want me to do, let me know. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it is AstroPapi, AstroPapi. See y'all in the next video, y'all.